welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today I'm going to do an update to a story, part 4, which is titled, Nurse Wife Thought Open Marriage Would Give Her the Perfect Life, Instead It Brought on a Nightmare. And guys, as a recap, because it's been about a month since I finished the first story. Actually, it was 3 parts, because it was a very long one. That's about the guy who was married to his wife a few years. She works at a hospital, a nurse, if I'm not mistaken, because, yeah, it says nurse in the title. And to no surprise, found out that eventually she was up to no good. He discovered this through, obviously, changes in her behavior, but also through her iPad. The iPad was like Pandora's box. When he opened that, all the proof. She was taking pictures, videos, and all that, you all recall. And he found out that she was discussing the cheating with obviously a coworker of hers. A lot of that goes on there. And this guy decided that obviously he's going to divorce her. But instead of just confronting her about her cheating, he decided he's going to take a different tactic. He was just going to say, I'm divorcing you because I'm no longer in love with you. And all these things like you smell and you're, I guess, terrible in bed. Things to shatter her ego. Pretty diabolical, but you know what? Hey, look what she was doing to him. And obviously that thing dragged out over 3 parts and the things that were going on. And it ended with him finding out from her at the last minute that she's saying, surprise, I'm pregnant. And that obviously left the whole story part 3 on a cliffhanger here. So now we're going to continue on where things have been going on for the last month here. Him dealing with the fact that this divorce, the fact that she's pregnant, and all the sneaky tactics she's trying to use to obviously say it's his baby and all that. So this is going to be a 2-parter, guys. So we got part 4 here. And then after I finish this, I'll do part 5. I'll publish part 5 in 2 hours. So space it out a little bit. So continuing where he left off a month ago, he says here, hello SSM. My apologies for the abrupt ending to my original post. I was reading my wife Janet's text with Ellen. Ellen's the co-worker who's nothing but trouble. About with the open marriage. They confirmed that my plan to destroy Janet's fragile female ego has been working better than I hoped. Then my wife dropped the bomb. Not only was she 7 weeks pregnant and doesn't know if the father is me or her lover, Sid, but regardless of who the father is, she's going to claim it's mine. Well, of course she's going to claim it's yours because you're the one that can pay the bills. And she's married to you. Sid is her lover, guys. Everything changed. I thought I could continue to torment her for a while and then get her out of my life for good. The divorce was in process and she'd be gone soon. But her pregnancy felt like all my plans fell apart. Well, what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, you got a major uppercut to the face. I knew from my wife's text that she was planning to tell me about the pregnancy in the morning. I emailed you what I had written, including that I just found out she was pregnant, without it occurring to me that I'd be leaving people hanging. But I was also left hanging as well. This update picks up where things left off. Yeah, a lot of guys are like, what the fuck? At the end of part 3, because it was very abrupt when he found she was pregnant. First, though, a lot of people in the comments said that I should have just left and ghosted her. Why put myself through all the drama? When I realized that confronting Janet would get me nothing but lies, gaslighting, deflection, and meaningless apologies, and lots of tears, of course, one of the options I considered was ghosting her. There were some problems with that. The apartment Jan and I are living in is in my name. I can't just leave and ghost her. So I would have to get her out. Her out with no contact while living with her. I could do that, but I thought through this scenario, I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. Well, dude, it's your life, your marriage, your divorce. Do whatever you want. If I confronted her about her infidelity and then ghosted her, she would forever believe the divorce was my fault. That I'm too insecure to forgive and forget her stupid mistake. That pretty much sums it up, dude. That's what she would have said. The outcome would be the same as if I yelled at her for hours. If I didn't say anything about her infidelity and just went complete no contact, she would think one of 3 things. Number 1, I found out about her affair and can't handle it. The divorce is all my fault. 2, I'm seeing someone else and I'm replacing Janet with another woman. That I'm an unfaithful scumbag and the divorce is all my fault. Or 3, I'm mad at her for some other reason and that I'm not mad enough to discuss it with her. That the divorce is all my fault. She'd end up blaming me and let herself off the hook. Dude, you hit the nail right on the head. You've been watching enough of these videos, reading enough of these stories, and all those 3 scenarios, that would have probably happened. Ghosting her would not get her to realize what a horrible person she is. Why do I care what Janet thinks about herself? With the exception of serious physical harm, I think betraying a spouse is among the worst things you can do to another human being, especially one you claim to love. I want to destroy her. The point of my plan, having her believe that I don't love her because she's a terrible person, is to get her to understand excuse me guys, to get her to understand in fact that she is a terrible person. I don't want her to think that she's a good person who just made some bad decisions. Anyway, after finding out about her pregnancy, I updated what I had written and went to bed. I didn't sleep, but I tried to figure out what to do next. I decided to continue what I was doing, but I'll continue to need access to Janet's iPad for the foreseeable future. Her iPad is how I found out she was texting and planning from her iPhone at work. If she moves out, she'll take her iPad. Well, you're playing the long game here. It's smart. I can't believe she isn't smart to figure out that her iPad's at home and you're reading this. But obviously she's a dumb twit. So I'm not going to push her out the door yet. I get a second iPad and set up and get Janet's text, but I figure all that out if I need to. Right now Janet's asleep and I need to leave for work, and she's at work when I get home. Weekends when we're both off at work, I spend more time at the gym with my friends. I joined a cycling club, so I'm gone most of the day on Sundays. Janet spends most of her time at home in her room, and we have minimal contact. I'm glad you're going to the gym, man, and regularly exercising, because you need that to keep yourself feeling good. Because you're going to need all the energy and good feelings to get you through this whole ordeal here. So I'm sticking with my plan. The next morning, I was pouring coffee when Janet came to the kitchen and said, "We need to talk." I told her unless it's to tell me she's signed the divorce agreement and is moving out, I'm not interested in having another pointless conversation with her. She blurted out, "I'm pregnant." I stared at her for a full minute, letting her think that I didn't know already, and then asked, "How is that possible?" "You're on the pill." She said she ran out and kept putting off getting a refill. She must have gotten pregnant then by accident. Uh-huh. I asked her how far along she is, and she said 7 weeks. I told her I don't want to have a child with her. The only thing I want to do is divorce her. She'll be a terrible mother. She can't be trusted not to get pregnant. How can she be trusted to take care of a baby? She started to cry, of course. I told her I'm going to sue for full and sole custody of the child. It would be criminal to leave a baby in the care of someone like her. Sobbing, she ran to her bedroom and closed the door, and I left for work. Isn't this the same girl that would repeatedly in your story slam the door? Every disagreement or argument, she go and slam the door, the whole fucking apartment shaking. Or am I thinking of a different story? I mean, let's be honest here. Women have a tendency when they get PO'd to slam doors. So I called my attorney, Julie. But she was with a client at the moment. And when she called me back, I told her about the pregnancy. And she said, "This complicates things." "You think, Julie? Really? Thank you." She replied, "No shit." She asked, "How do I know that Janet's pregnant?" From Janet. Do I believe her? I do, but who knows? Does Janet know who the father is? Probably me or Sid. I told Julie that I don't want Janet to know what I found out about her cheating. Can we get a DNA test implying that I might not be the father? Julie answered that we served her divorce papers, and a few days later she claims she's pregnant. That is very suspicious. You're darn right it is. So we want a paternity test. Julie asked how far along Janet is, and I said 7 weeks. Julie said she should be at 8 weeks before the DNA test of her blood is useful. I asked what happens to the divorce agreement we served Janet with. Julie said it's worthless now. We can't put a settlement in front of a judge that doesn't address her pregnancy. Let's see what Janet decides to do about the baby. If she has it and it's mine, I should prepare to open my wallet very wide. Yep, you can count on that. So when I got home from work, I opened Janet's iPad looking for new text. The live texting between Janet and Ellen began shortly after 7 p.m. Ellen's her coworker, remember that, guys? Ellen asked if Janet told her husband. Yes, he said he's going to take the baby from her. Ellen asked if Richard questioned if the baby is his. Richard's this guy, guys. Janet said that it would never occur to me that she'd cheat on me. No, he thinks the baby is his, she said. He just doesn't want a baby, at least not with Janet. Ellen then asked what Janet's going to do. And Janet texted the only bond now between her and Richard is the baby. If she gets rid of the baby, Richard will divorce her and she'll never see him again. Again, this guy's Richard. He's talking about the conversation. He's literally like reading what they were saying. If she has the baby, the child will tie Richard and her together for at least the next 18 years. The best outcome is that Richard will decide to remain married for the baby's sake. If he doesn't and she gets custody, Richard will have to support them. Look at these two plotting away. Maybe supposedly that Richard, will have to provide enough support, she won't have to work. Quitting work was the point of getting pregnant in the first place. But she's worried that she won't be a good mother. She doesn't know what to do. Ellen says she's only 6 weeks pregnant. Plenty of time for planning. Maybe they can get me to man up and stay in the marriage. Yeah, man up. She's cheating, and he's got pictures of her. Well, remember, these two supposedly don't know that the guy telling the story here knows that she's cheating. Manning up. Ellen asked if Janet is sure that Richard doesn't know about Janet and Sid. Janet answered that Richard has never even hinted that he suspects anything. Remember, this guy made it clear, I'm just divorcing you because I don't love you and you smell. And Janet continued, Ellen is the only one who insists husbands always confront their wives when they discover they're unfaithful. Ellen answered, right. Husbands always want to yell, scream, and throw a fit just because their wives are enjoying some innocent fun with guys other than him. Did she really say in the text, innocent fun? Not that I should be surprised here, but still. She goes on to say, husbands think marriage is slavery and their own wives' bodies. Talk about selfish. There's no way Richard knows about Sid. This is read out like the Effinist handbook. Does Janet want to find out who the father is? Janet said it doesn't matter who got her pregnant. Richard will be the father. Ellen asked if it could be someone other than Richard or Sid. Has Janet been with anybody else? Janet didn't reply. Ellen texted that Janet knows everything about Ellen's hookups and marriage. It's time for Janet to come clean. If Janet can't confide in Ellen, that doesn't say much about their friendship. Friendship, really? These people are just awful people. You can't have two awful people working together and actually be friends. Darth Vader and fucking Darth Sidious weren't exactly friends. Come on here. I know that's a fictional story, but you get my point. It's not like she's going to tell Richard. Janet texted back, okay. She fooled around some after she and Richard moved in together, and there were a few guys in the weeks leading up to their wedding. She wasn't married yet. She was still single and free, so why not? Ellen asked how many were a few guys. Janet replied she and her girlfriends had a lot of wedding planning sessions, but they were just a cover for the going to the clubs and picking up guys. So, bro, the dude telling the story, your wife just admitted that before you got married, she was cheating on you as well. Shocker. Once a cheater, always a cheater. So she ended up with 5 or 6 guys in the weeks before our wedding. But Janet vowed that once she and I got married, there would be no other men. Clearly not. Ellen asked, so Sid was the only one you met after you married? And Janet answered, not exactly. A few months after our wedding, my mother got sick, so I stayed with them to help out. I bumped into my ex from high school, and we started to hook up again. I figured that since we had SEX dozens of time of high school, what's the big deal if we do it 10 years later? Again, thank you for proving the point. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Yeah, your wife, dude, is awful. My ex and I have already been there. I told myself it wasn't really cheating. This is the conversation with her and Ellen. It wasn't like I found some new love. It was more like finding an old misplaced sweatshirt that I was fond of. It just made me feel good to put it on again. Oh, for God's sakes. I couldn't wait to visit my parents and told Richard all sorts of stories about why he didn't need to come with me. Being with my ex was both comfortable and thrilling. He's married, so we had to sneak around like we did in high school. Well, it's all about the butterflies, the suspense, the drama. Looking back, I don't understand. This is, again, her talking. Looking back, I don't understand why I even bothered with my ex. I can't explain any of that. Rich is all I ever wanted. Unfortunately, he doesn't want me. I stopped seeing my ex when I started with Sid. Ellen texted, don't beat yourself over it. It's no big deal. Just SCX. Your ex was simply some comfort food without the calories. That is unless you swallowed. Ellen added a spinning smiley face emoji to her text. Well, that's disgusting. Ellen then asked, anybody else? Janet said that when she started working in the lab about 4 months ago, a really hot intern came down to check on blood labs needed ASAP. This is before she and Sid started hooking up. While Sid was finishing the blood work, the intern took Janet's hand and led her to the visitor restroom. This is obviously going too far and seems there's lots of questionable things in this story with these girls and what they're saying, but Yeah, this sounds like a fucking between a soap opera and a PORN movie. But there was nothing that Janet wanted more. She was hoping for more visits from the intern, but he never came back. Well, it must be because she smells. Probably because of her smell. There you go. When she was finishing, the intern got off in her mouth. She looked like she was just grimacing. She didn't think much of it at the time, but she understands now the scowl was probably his reaction to her smell. Remember, this guy told the story, he told her that she smells. It's one of the reasons he doesn't want to be around her anymore, wants to divorce her. She reeks. Ugh. Now she's getting a complex. That's why she never saw him again. But Janet texted, that was when she first started working in the lab, maybe 4 months ago. None of those guys could be the father, only Richard or Sid. Ellen texted back to her that she knew that Sid wasn't Janet's first adventure. Janet's not in Ellen's league, but Ellen will get there. Why hasn't Janet told Ellen about any of these guys? Janet said the guys aren't important, just hookups, and she felt guilty after each of these slip-ups. And after every time she was with Sid too. Really? Your wife in this story is feeling guilty? I don't think so. She always told herself that this was the last time, but she can't ever seem to say no. The excitement is addictive. Yeah, the butterflies, the tingles. Now that Richard is leaving her, she's ashamed of all that. What kind of wife plays around on the husband that she loves? Ellen replied, every wife I know. It's completely natural. Again, this is why you pay attention to who your wife hangs out with. There's nothing to be ashamed of that or feel guilty about, she said. Ellen included a couple of hand emojis in her text. The 2 middle fingers held down with the thumb and only the pinky and index fingers raised. Were these horns for me or for every husband? Ellen then asked if Janet wants to know who the father is. Janet said sure, but how is she supposed to get a DNA sample from Richard? Hold him down while she sticks a Q-tip in his mouth and tell him what? That is the latest TikTok challenge, apparently. Ellen said we can use the semen, or their semen. Just have them wear a condom and grab the condom when they're done. Janet is at least 7 weeks pregnant next week, so she can take the paternity test. Since Richard won't touch Janet, if Janet introduces Ellen to Richard, that will give Ellen plenty of time to get a bunch of condom loads out of him. Really, these friends think that this dude telling the stories, really, they think you're going to hook up with this Ellen chick? Are you fucking kidding me? Clearly, Ellen thinks very highly of herself and her sexual appeal. Janet replied, very funny. Ellen said, so it's Sid. Who's going to get his sample? Janet texted that she told Sid that they were done. He's acting like a child who has a toy taken away. He's threatening to send pictures he took to Richard and to her family. He won't because they both will end up getting fired. Janet continued, you can be his new toy. One of the delightful things about a 22-year-old like Sid is that he's always ready to go. Anytime, anywhere. Ellen replied, you have pictures. There was no response from Janet. So they decided that Ellen would get a DNA sample from Sid and have it tested with Janet's blood. Janet asked, isn't taking DNA from someone without their knowledge illegal? Like these two care. Ellen suggested that they tell the lab that Sid's sample belongs to Richard, not Sid. Ellen continued, we both know the baby is probably Sid, so we'll put Richard's name on Sid's sample. So here you go, guys. They're conspiring to screw around with the paternity test. There you go. Oh, here's the test. This is why you have to have, you definitely probably have a couple taken, and you control every aspect of the process. If Richard ever gets curious about who the baby's father is, you'll have a paternity test that proves the kid is his. And Richard won't care if he took his DNA test without him knowing about it. He'll be too freaked out that he's having a kid. So they agreed, and that's what they would do. I watched their text until Janet got off at work. By the way, guys, I know that whole thing is a big text exchange, but it's important to the story here. They're plotting and planning about, obviously, faking the paternity test. Ellen wanted to know more about Janet's intern. Janet described him, and Ellen said that she thinks she knows who he is. He's moved on now, but they gossiped about who he is in the hospital and who he's been with. Who the fuck cares? In addition to my wife, of course, Ellen did suggest that Janet get tested for STDs immediately. Before I found out about the baby, I figured I had accomplished what I wanted in the game. I was playing with Janet. I decided to get her to move out of my apartment and then wait for the divorce to decree and never see her again. Now that I found that Sid was not Janet's one and only, and that she's never been faithful, I found new purpose in destroying Janet's mentality and emotionally plenty more to do. You have a right to destroy her. Really? There's going to be someone in the comment section, you should forgive and forget. Well, I do agree in time he should forgive so he's not walking around anger in his heart forever. But right now, it's no mercy. I had to wait a while before finding out who the father is, so I decided to use that time to dump on Janet some more. Some of the people who commented on my original post suggested I do things to Janet that are exceptionally nasty, vindictive, petty, and cruel. In other words, they were great suggestions. Thanks to everyone for their comments and support. I got an opportunity to use these ideas from 2 of the guys who commented. Additionally, thanks to those 2. The second suggestion I'll talk about later on in the story. The first subscriber suggestion I was at the gym after work one weekend and asked for college kids there if he wanted to earn an easy $50. I picked the sort of guy I thought Janet would find attractive and wanted to impress. I told him I wanted to play an innocent prank on my wife and explain what I needed him to do. He agreed. I drove him to the hospital and parked the car. The hospital is almost all glass facing out on the side of the building where we were parked. The lab is on the first floor. Janet's desk is in the reception waiting area in front of the double doors leading into the lab. I could see Janet busy at her desk from the car. I pointed her out to the college kid and he got out of the car. His job was to walk up to Janet and ask her for directions to the hospital pharmacy. While Janet is providing directions, the college kid would start sniffing in the air and scrunch up his face and ask if he smelled something foul. Give her more of a complex of smelling, huh? He'd ask Janet what that horrible smell is. Then he'd lean in towards her and sniff her, immediately snap back and take a couple of steps away from Janet, making it clear that Janet is the one who stinks. I watched as Janet turned red, smelled both her armpits, started crying, leaping up from her chair, and rushed through the double doors to the lab. Best $50 you ever spent. The kid came back to the car and said I told him that this was all innocent. My wife seemed pretty upset. I answered I wanted her to change her perfume. She will now. The kid laughed and I dropped him off at the gym. Now that her stink has been independently confirmed, Janet will find every horrible thing I say about her more credible. Well, this is small potatoes compared to all the cheating and broken promises and everything else she's done to you, dude. The texts between Janet and Ellen have been mostly status reports on what's happening with me on the home front and a lot of gossip about her coworkers. Then one night Ellen texted that she had big news. Her husband has decided he wants a divorce. Well, after all this time, now Ellen's getting divorced. After 6 years of putting up with Ellen's dating, he decided he can't take it anymore. Well, no shit. Ellen said, I brought a day home for the first time. I was tired of hotels and bachelor pads and saw no reason why I couldn't enjoy the comforts of my own home. This sick asshole's doing this in her own house in front of her guy, but again, she has no respect for him. He put up with it for 6 years. I just want to be able to get away from the guy without having to drive home in the middle of the night. I want to throw the guy out, sleep in my own bed, shower in my own bathroom, and not have to put on the same clothes that I wore the night before. When I introduced the guy to my husband left the house without a word. God, this chick is pure evil. He has since packed up his things and moved out. Too bad for my husband. We've been married 16 years. I'll take everything he has. With all the alimony he's going to have to pay me, I'll have a great life. Don't you love no-fault laws? And this is why there shouldn't be a no-fault divorce states. This chick is pure evil, and now she wanted to script this Janet chick's life. Although Janet was screwing up her own life and cheating long before she met Ellen here. So, the following Monday night, Ellen texted Janet that she and Sid are screwing. Oh boy, it was so easy. She loves being a nurse working at the hospital. It's better than a swingers convention for hookups. That's the only reason she continues to work. She continues, it's time to help Sid fill up a condom. Janet is far enough along that they should be able to get a good result from the blood paternity test. Ellen found a male in the lab that she thinks will work and has already had the return package the lab wants them to use. Ellen saw a sample of the paternity report they issued. They put the names provided with the samples in the report, but don't guarantee the DNA actually came from the people named. They use the alleged father. Ellen asked if they're still attaching Richard's name to Sid's DNA sample, and yes. The lab report doesn't include what the content of the samples submitted are. If Janet shows Richard the test report and he wants to know where she got his DNA, she can tell she submitted hair from his hairbrush. Janet asked why not just use Sid's hair, or Janet can get Richard's hair. Ellen replied that using hair to test DNA is iffy. Semen is more likely to provide a usable result, and collecting semen is much more fun. Evil, evil, evil. They agree that Ellen will come to the hospital lab when it gets slow in the ER and take Janet's blood. After work that night, Ellen will take Sid home and grab his used condom. Tomorrow, they'll overnight the DNA samples to the lab. Ellen will take care of all the paperwork and signatures. It will take 3 to 5 business days. Once the lab receives the samples, they'll email Janet the results. Holy freaking shit. My God. Well, guys, that is where I'm going to conclude part 4. And when we get to part 5, we're going to get in more into the good details here, how this guy's handling things, but holy freaking shit. Nothing should surprise you. And I can imagine all you guys that watch me regularly and hear these stories, if you ever have to go to the hospital or the doctor's office and see nurses, I can only imagine what goes through your head. Yeah. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up now. And in 2 hours, I'll post part 5. And you'll see more where this is going, how this guy handles things, and all that. It's definitely good. See you then.